How dare you show your face here after what you've done? You have no right to judge me!
When Sarah walked into the luxury store in her worn purple dress, everyone laughed and mocked her. The manager tried to throw her out. But when the billionaire CEO stepped forward and called her, "Madam," their cruel laughter turned to shocked silence. Her grandmother's hidden legacy was about to change everything. A simple woman with a worn dress, a hidden legacy worth millions, and the day truth silenced the cruel hearts forever. "Can I help you?" The question came from a tall woman in a striking red blazer, her platinum hair pulled back in a severe bun. Victoria Ashford, the store manager, approached with the practiced smile of someone who had already decided Sarah didn't belong. "Are you perhaps looking for directions? The subway station is 2 blocks. I'm here to see about a ring," Sarah interrupted softly, her voice barely audible over the classical music floating through the air. She held up the envelope. "My grandmother's wedding ring. She said I could bring it here for an appraisal." Victoria's smile turned condescending. Around them, other customers, women draped in designer clothes and men in $1,000 suits, had begun to notice the interaction. A few whispered behind manicured hands, their eyes scanning Sarah's simple appearance with poorly concealed disdain. "An appraisal." Victoria's laugh was light but cutting. "Darling, this is Lumiere and Company. We deal in pieces that start at $50,000. I'm sure your grandmother's ring is lovely, but perhaps a local pawn shop would be more appropriate for your needs." Heat rushed to Sarah's cheeks as several customers openly laughed. A woman in an orange evening gown pulled out her phone, angling it toward Sarah as if she were some sort of curiosity to be documented. Another customer, wearing designer sunglasses indoors, nudged her companion and pointed. My grandmother insisted," Sarah persisted, though her voice wavered. "She said to ask for Mr. Chen. She knew him years ago, before." "Mr. Chen." Victoria's eyebrows arched dramatically. "Mr. Chen is the CEO of the entire Lumiere luxury group. He owns this store and 15 others worldwide. He doesn't do appraisals for walk-ins, especially not for." She gestured vaguely at Sarah's appearance, letting the insult hang unspoken in the air. The gathered crowd had grown. Store employees in sleek black uniforms had emerged from the back rooms, drawn by the commotion. They stood in a semicircle around Sarah and Victoria, their expressions ranging from amused to openly hostile. One younger employee, wearing a name tag that read, Emma, looked uncomfortable but said nothing. "Please," Sarah tried again, her knuckles white around the envelope. "My grandmother, Margaret Chen," she said. "Margaret Chen." Victoria laughed outright now, joined by several customers. "How convenient that she shares a last name with our CEO. Let me guess, long-lost relatives. A secret connection. Do you have any idea how many people try to use fake stories to get into this store?" "It's not fake," Sarah said, fighting back tears. "She worked here, decades ago, before it became what it is now. She was a designer, and Mr. Chen's father." "Enough." Victoria's voice turned sharp as a blade. "Security, please escort this woman out. And make sure she doesn't come back. We have real customers to attend to, not time wasters with delusions and costume jewelry." A security guard in a gray suit stepped forward, his hand already moving toward Sarah's elbow. The crowd pressed closer, phones out now, capturing the humiliation for social media. Sarah felt tears finally spill down her cheeks, the envelope crinkling in her desperate grip. And then everything stopped. "What exactly is happening here?" The voice cut through the crowd like thunder, deep, authoritative, and carrying an edge of barely controlled anger. Every head turned toward the back of the store, where a private elevator had opened silently. A man in his early 50s emerged, his silver-streaked hair immaculately styled, his charcoal suit clearly bespoke. His presence commanded immediate attention, and the laughing crowd fell silent as if someone had flipped a switch. Victoria's face drained of color. "Mr. Chen, I didn't know you were in the building. I was just handling a situation with someone who claimed to know you." "Claimed." William Chen's eyes, sharp and assessing, moved past Victoria to land on Sarah. His expression transformed in an instant from anger to something softer, recognition mixed with wonder. "Margaret's granddaughter." The words fell like stones into still water, sending ripples of shock through the assembled crowd. Sarah looked up, confusion and hope warring on her tear-stained face. You know who I am." William Chen crossed the distance between them in long strides, ignoring Victoria's sputtering attempts to explain. When he reached Sarah, he did something that made the entire store gasp. He bowed slightly, in the traditional gesture of respect. "Madam," he said formally, "I apologize profusely for this treatment. Your grandmother Margaret was not just an employee of my father's store, she was his first designer, his partner in building this company from nothing. She was family to us. But she left," Sarah whispered. "She said she had to leave when she got sick, when the medical bills. She left because my father was dying," William interrupted gently, and in his grief, he made a terrible mistake. He couldn't bear to see her, because she reminded him of happier times. He sent her away with severance, but he never stopped regretting it. He spent the last 20 years of his life trying to find her, to make amends, to give her what she deserved. He turned to address the crowd, his voice rising with authority. "This woman's grandmother designed half the signature pieces this store is famous for. The Chen collection, named after her, not us. She refused credit, refused royalties, because she loved the work more than recognition. And today, you mocked her granddaughter for having the courage to walk through our doors." Silence. Absolute, mortified silence. William turned back to Sarah, his expression gentle. "The envelope. May I?" With shaking hands, Sarah passed it to him. William opened it carefully, sliding out a simple gold band with an unusual spiral setting. The moment he saw it, emotion flickered across his controlled features. "The prototype," he breathed. "The first piece she ever designed. My father proposed to my mother with a ring based on this design. We've been searching for this for decades." He looked up at Sarah. "Your grandmother, is she?" "She's in the hospital," Sarah said quietly. "Stage 4 cancer. She said she wanted me to bring this here, that it might be worth something, enough to help with the bills. But I think maybe she just wanted me to find you." William Chen's jaw tightened. He turned to Victoria, whose face had gone from white to gray. "You're dismissed. Effective immediately. Clear your office and leave your key card with security." "Mr. Chen, please, I didn't know." "You didn't ask," he cut her off coldly. "You saw someone who didn't fit your prejudiced idea of what our customers should look like, and you chose cruelty over curiosity. That is not what this company stands for. That is not what Margaret taught us." Victoria fled, her heels clicking rapidly across the marble. The crowd began to disperse, shame-faced, their phones disappearing into pockets and purses. Several customers quietly left the store entirely. William gently took Sarah's arm, an offer, not a command, and guided her toward the elevator. "Please, come with me. We have much to discuss, and I have something to show you." The elevator rose to a private floor Sarah hadn't known existed. William's office was less an office and more a museum to the store's history. Photographs lined the walls, and in nearly all of them, Sarah recognized her grandmother, younger, healthier, but unmistakably the woman who had raised her. "Your grandmother saved my father's life," William said, gesturing to a photo of a young Margaret standing beside a handsome Asian man in front of a tiny storefront. "Not literally, though she might have. When my father came to America, he had nothing. Margaret was working as a secretary in a law office. She saw him struggling with English, helped him fill out business permits, introduced him to suppliers. When he opened his first store, she was his only employee." He moved to another photograph, this one showing Margaret bent over a workbench, tools in hand. She had a gift. She could see beauty in the simplest things, a spiral of water going down a drain, the curve of a flower petal. She turned those observations into jewelry that told stories. Customers didn't just buy pieces, they bought meaning. Sarah wiped her eyes, overwhelmed. Why didn't she tell me any of this? Pride, perhaps. Or pain. William opened a mahogany cabinet, revealing row after row of jewelry pieces. When my father sent her away, I was young, but I remember her crying. She loved this work, but she loved my father's happiness more. She didn't want to be a reminder of his loss. He pulled out a velvet box and opened it. Inside was a necklace so beautiful it seemed to capture light itself, a cascade of diamonds arranged in a spiral pattern that echoed the ring Sarah had brought. "The Chen Cascade," William said softly. "Our most famous piece. Designed by Margaret 40 years ago. It sells for $2 million, and we've made 12 of them." Your grandmother never accepted a penny in royalties, no matter how we begged. 2 million. Sarah's legs felt weak. I just needed enough for her medical bills. And you'll have it, William assured her. But more than that, your grandmother deserves recognition. With your permission, I'd like to announce the truth about the Chen collection. I'd like to rename this store in her honor. And I'd like to hire you. Hire me. Sarah blinked. I'm not a designer. I'm just a high school art teacher. Who has her grandmother's eye? William interrupted, gesturing to her dress. That's a Watanabe fabric pattern, isn't it? Most people wouldn't recognize it because it's from his early work, before he became famous. But you chose it because you saw the craftsmanship, the story in the weave. Sarah looked down at her purple dress in surprise. She'd bought it at a thrift store because she'd loved the fabric's subtle texture. I don't need another designer, William continued. I need someone to help me establish the Margaret Chen Foundation for Arts Education. I need someone who understands that beauty isn't about price tags and pretension, it's about meaning and connection. Someone who, like her grandmother, sees worth in things others overlook. Tears flowed freely now, but they were different tears. I don't know what to say. Say you'll bring me to see her, William replied. I owe Margaret 40 years of apologies. And I owe her the truth, that she built something beautiful that has touched millions of lives. That her legacy isn't just in jewelry, but in the lesson she taught my father, that real luxury isn't about excluding people, it's about making beauty accessible to those who appreciate it. 3 days later, Sarah returned to Lumiere and Company, but this time, everything was different. The store had been closed to the public for a private event. In the center of the showroom, where Victoria had once stood to mock her, now stood an elegant display featuring Margaret's original designs, photographs documenting her contributions, and the ring Sarah had brought, now preserved under museum-quality glass as the cornerstone of the collection. William Chen stood at a podium, addressing a room full of press, customers, and most importantly, the entire store staff. Emma, the young employee who had looked uncomfortable during Sarah's humiliation, was in the front row. Today, we correct a 40-year injustice, William announced. This store, and indeed this entire company, was built on the genius of Margaret Chen. Not my relative, though we loved her as family. She was an artist who saw beauty where others saw ordinary. She was a woman who valued craft over credit. And today, we honor her properly. He gestured to Sarah, who stepped forward nervously. Margaret's granddaughter Sarah has agreed to lead our new foundation, which will provide scholarships to art students from underprivileged backgrounds. Because Margaret believed, and we believe, that talent exists everywhere, but opportunity does not. The room erupted in applause. Several customers from the day of Sarah's humiliation were present, and she noticed them carefully not meeting her eyes. One, the woman who had filmed her on her phone, approached afterward with a sincere apology and a check for the foundation. But the best moment came when William and Sarah visited Margaret in the hospital. The elderly woman, frail but alert, wept when William took her hand. I never forgot you, he said simply. My father never forgot you. And now, no one will. Margaret looked at her granddaughter, pride shining in her tired eyes. Did you learn the lesson, my dear? What lesson, Grandma? That worth isn't determined by appearance or wealth. It's determined by character, by craft, by kindness. Those people in that store looked at you and saw someone to mock. But you walked in there with courage, with dignity. You represented me well. Sarah realized then that her grandmother had known exactly what would happen. This wasn't just about an appraisal, it was about teaching Sarah one final lesson about resilience in the face of cruelty, about standing firm in your worth even when others tried to diminish it. 6 months later, the Margaret Chen Foundation opened its doors. The first scholarship recipient was Emma, the young employee who had stayed silent during Sarah's humiliation but who later apologized, admitting she had wanted to speak up but feared losing her job. William Chen had not only kept her employed but promoted her, recognizing that acknowledging one's failures was the first step to growth. As for Victoria, Sarah heard she'd found work at a rival store. Sarah hoped she'd learned something from the experience, though she knew some people never did. On the foundation's opening day, Sarah stood in front of Margaret's portrait, painted from one of the photographs in William's office. Her grandmother had passed away 2 months earlier, her medical bills paid, her legacy secured, surrounded by love in her final days. A young girl, maybe 16, stood staring at the portrait. Her clothes were worn, her shoes scuffed, but her eyes held the same fire Sarah had seen in her grandmother's photographs. Was she really self-taught? The girl asked Sarah. She was, Sarah confirmed. She never went to design school. She just saw the world differently than everyone else. I want to do that, the girl said firmly. I want to create beautiful things. But my guidance counselor said art isn't practical, that I should focus on something more realistic. Sarah smiled, remembering her grandmother's words. Let me tell you what Margaret Chen would say to that. Beauty is always practical, because humans need it to survive. We need beauty like we need food and water, it feeds something essential in us. Don't let anyone tell you that your gift isn't valuable. The girl's eyes widened. Really? Really? In fact, why don't you fill out an application for our summer program? We teach jewelry design, but more than that, we teach you to trust your vision, to see worth in unexpected places. As the girl hurried off to get an application, Sarah felt her grandmother's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder. The lesson had come full circle, from Margaret, who saw beauty in simple things and built an empire, to Sarah, who learned that dignity doesn't depend on others' approval, to this young girl, who would learn that talent and worth exist independent of circumstance. Everyone had laughed at the simple woman in the luxury store. But in the end, that simple woman's granddaughter had transformed not just a store, but an entire company's understanding of value. Because real luxury, Sarah had learned, isn't about price tags or exclusivity. It's about recognizing beauty, honoring craft, and treating every person who walks through your door as someone who might be carrying something precious, if only you have the wisdom to see it.